So let's take a look at a different approach that we can use for creating button components, and that's the one where we actually need to take into account that padding varies from one variant to the other. Again, in the future, Figma might resolve this. It's going to be really easy to implement, but right now we're actually going to have 3 different variants of everything that we're going to need if we want to have spacing that's going to be different. And if we think of another case, something like this, where we don't have a text, and to ensure that all of our heights of all of our components for buttons stay the same, I'm gonna make this padding a little bit bigger than when it is in here with a button text, because icons are smaller, so we need to take that into account when we're planning padding too. We can have something like this where we also have just an icon button. So we now have 4 types of buttons. Some of them have icons, some of them have text, some of them have a combination of the two. And because icon can appear both on the left side and on the right side, we're actually gonna have to create a different logic for this. I'm gonna create another version of this that's not gonna have a button on the right. And again, depending on the needs of your project, don't just create things because you can. Introduce new components or new variations into your design only when your design requires it. So I wouldn't start things off with designing every type of button that I might sometimes use in the future. I would actually start things off with the things that I know that I'm going to need. And then when a need appears, I'm going to introduce it and expand on my system. So ideally, in the beginning, you might have just this button, or this button with text and this one with an icon. And then after a couple of weeks working on the projects, or a couple of days, it doesn't matter, or even years, a need appears, and it would be really nice if we could also have a version of a button that has the icon on the left side. So you introduce that. Because maybe it makes the whole buttons more scannable, more memorable, or it's kind of additionally signaling what this button does alongside the text. In here, you might have a need for the left icon for that, but also the right icon might be used for all of the cases when you're signaling that the tap or click is going to take you somewhere in the future state, or forward or to the right or something. So visually you're also signaling that thing should be on the right as well. So you introduce a button that has an icon on the right. So I know that in some of my examples I'm kind of creating things without any kind of background for it. So I just want to let you know that first time, especially if you're a newbie designer, someone who's been doing this for a couple of months or maybe years, and you're now tasked with creating components or creating a design system, don't just do everything because other designers do it. Introduce things when you need them. So even with styles, you can see in here, it's very minimal right now. But if you're building your screens and you notice that you need a lot more shades for the neutrals or primary or error colors, introduce them, but only introduce them when you really need them. Same thing applies to the components as well. Don't create 20 versions of a button if all of your UI is going to require just one type of button. You're just wasting time creating something to ensure that it's kind of scalable in some kind of future sense. But honestly, design is always scalable. You can always introduce new things when the situation requires it. So unlike other tips that you might hear on this, I'm going to be very firm on actually introducing styles or components only when you need them, not from the beginning. And based on my experience, I might know even before I start designing what are some things that I definitely am going to need, depending on the type of project, type of audience, scale of the team, scale of the clients, budget, and so on and so on. But since I know that some of you might have experience, others might not, or you might have it but not a lot of it, it's much easier to think of all of those things and all of those rules as something that you're going to expand upon. So don't try to think of all of the future cases and edge cases. Once you're presented with a situation If you need something and you don't have it, introduce it. Until then, don't bring it into your design system or design rules or components that you have. So with that in mind, I'm going to create this a little bit differently just so that we know that those are going to be some different things that we're going to handle later on to show you a different way of doing it. Right now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a component set out of these 4 types of buttons. I'm going to call this button. I'm going to go inside and basically make this property type and then rename all of these different properties that we're going to have in here. So button, let's go in here. This one is icon left. This one is text only. This one is icon right. And this one is icon only. So what you can see now is when I drag this outside, I can basically, just by clicking on some of these options in here when it comes to type, I can easily select the one that I need. Now, that's a drop-down, and drop-downs are always not ideal, but since I don't have any kind of reason for introducing more variant properties in here, I'm just gonna keep all of those things under one. What may happen is I may decide to kind of expand on this and create a new property by having a different colored button. And in here we can call all of these 4. Oh, sorry, we need another property in here. And we'll call it state, or maybe better, importance. Since we use type for like where all of those things are, you may go in here and call this primary, and let's call this, or like we can call it state, whatever, it doesn't really matter at this point. You're gonna find something that you like. In here, now we have type and we have state, but I usually kind of use state for, is it disabled, is it active, is it hovering, is it showing how the hover state looks like, and so on. So again, like something of this would be maybe the style of the button. Like you can pick and choose later on. So what we have in here right now is we can switch between primary and error, and I'm guessing that some of these have now switched. So I'm gonna go in here and actually apply the right one. This is the icon left. This is the icon right. This is the icon only. And this one is text only. So you can see as soon as I replace some of these new properties that Figma has created for us, well, not properties, but states of properties, they disappear from here. And Figma usually does it because once you duplicate some of these items, they don't want you to have any kind of errors in the way that you've set up your components. So you can always go inside and kind of replace some of those things. But in here, you can now see that I can switch to text only and error, and it's going to basically keep the other setting untouched. That's the power of a component. So we have one component, it's a button, but we can, in our design, change it to whatever we need whenever we need it. So in here, what I would do, I would also create states or variants of these buttons for hover state, active state, disabled state, and so on. And maybe I would have these as primary options, but then have some kind of a lighter shade for secondary options. So I'm just going to quickly introduce that and just do this. And in here, instead of style, I'm actually gonna add, oh no, one thing that I don't like is the fact that I can't introduce a variant in here now when I'm in the state of doing it. But I can go outside and here, create a new one, create a variant, and it's gonna be state. And we have 4 of these. All of these will have state primary. So maybe this is not the best way to call it. Maybe this should be let's see, let's call it primary state. I'm kind of blanking right now, but I'll keep it then. It's gonna be primary, and that's okay. And we're gonna go in here and call all of these ones secondary. And then we also have to go inside and figure out like all of these that have this is actually icon left, and style is gonna be, oh, I just have to go inside, pick all of those, make it primary. All of those are error. Okay, so is it all working? Okay, there are no errors. Perfect. So let's just now pick all of the red ones, go in here, change this to this, and change this to this, and go find all of the blue ones, and in here let's pick that, and let's make this, and we have all of the secondary buttons. Now, because I prefer things to actually be ordered by their style, I'm gonna do it like this. Oh, so we actually have, no, only in here do we have it ordered like that. So in here, let's do it the same thing. We have all of those options in the components right now, and all of these are secondary, all of these are primary. And now when we drag something out, we can have text only, error, secondary error. So you can see, like, with each new option, you're introducing a lot more variants, but they're all interchangeable if you do it the right way. What I wanted to demo with this other approach is that maybe if we don't need icon on the right side, maybe we can do it in a different way, where we're going to create a component set, and we're actually, instead of using one property, going to use two. So I'm going to do this. This one is going to be icon, and the first one is going to be maybe something like text. And we can go inside, and for all of these ones that actually have text, we can rename them. So this one is going to be text on, or yes, or true, and the other option is like false, or no, or off. That means that on, off are like turning on and off. Yes, no, is it there or is it not there? And true, false, again, same thing. All of those options, all of those three options that you have, is actually going to turn on the switcher on our component instance. So if we put this as text on and icon on, this one as text on, icon off, and this one as text off and icon on. Again, I could have used false instead of off and so on. What happens in here is you can just decide what you're going to need in here. And since there is no option that has text, you can see that icon kind of turns on and off depending on the first one too, but with the second one you can actually control it all the time. So yeah, this gives you a little bit of flexibility, because in just one click you can kind of switch between some of these options, while with the drop downs you have more flexibility, but you're always going to require 2 clicks. So if I have a smaller component with not a lot of these styles, I might actually prefer naming things and kind of organizing them in a way that I have 2 properties, even though I could have easily had just one, and it could have been a drop down that allows me to go through options like I can in here, where it's icon left, text only, icon only. because I played around with the properties, now I can just kind of play around in here, and it can sometimes honestly just be fun doing that. So yeah, another way that you can organize your things in here. Now, when it comes to other things that you can do, you can always go inside these options, and you can see that Figma now knows that I'm selecting the text on all of these. So you can go in here and make content something that you can override without actually, as you saw me, kind of dive in and by clicking on the text. So I can have text in here, and default value could be something like enter text. If things like this happen, just go in here and distribute spacing and kind of make it whatever you want to make it. But you can now go in here and just change the text here, and it's going to work. So you can turn those things on similarly to how you can turn on Boolean properties in here too, to make it a little bit easier to work with components when you're in here. And also, if you want to, you can go inside, select all of those icons that you have in here, and go in here. Since we have those icons and components as components, you can create swap property. It's going to be an icon, and default it can be plus. Create property, and now when you have a button outside, as soon as you have icon visible in that variant, you're going to be able to select a different icon from here. So it's going to be like really easy to do so. And as you can see, you have some preferred options, but you can also kind of just go to recently used or whatever and kind of switch it in here. What else? Oh, in here inside of this, you can reorder things like you would in here. And we can reorder this one to be on the bottom, so it's kind of closer to the icon it's impacting. Now when I go in here, if I have text only, this disappeared, but if I have icon only, there's a drop down for icon switcher in here. Yeah, I think that's kind of a more advanced look at components and how extensive they are, some strategies that you can use when you're naming things and creating those properties and creating some of those options. Other things that you might have noticed in here is that you can also add new things on the go. So Boolean, we've demonstrated it's something that you can kind of show and hide. That's it. And most often it's going to be used for icons. In here, like if you want to have specific padding, I've shown you an example of a different way to do it that's just using variants on top. Instance swap is the thing that we used for the icon, where you're now able to kind of show the dropdown for the different icons that you're using on the top level of this component, instead of having to kind of, if we didn't have that in here, you would have to always kind of double click and go into that specific part that you wanna change in this component. And finally, you also have the ability to show text, so you can kind of control content in here as well. One of the newer things that Figma released, and again, depending on when you're viewing this, it might not be so new. You can actually expose properties from all of the nested instances. So a great thing with components, similar to how a lot of other things work in Figma, you can kind of nest things inside. So if you have a component inside of a component, inside of a component, inside of a component, you can actually just tap on the top level component and show nested parts and nested elements that you can control from the bottom level of the component until the top level of the component as well. So that's what it's used for. When it comes to other things that we have when it comes to components, again, do think of constraints. Those are very important. Play around with auto layout so you can combine auto layout with components as well. But we're going to dive in a lot deeper in our next module when we're going to go over some of the design systems. So in that module, we're going to go over everything that you need to do to ensure that your design is at the right place to kick things off, and that you can just start designing and kind of continuously build upon this new design system that you've built for this project. Not all of the projects are going to need it, but that's a topic for a different video. Okay, I hope you learned a lot, and see you in the next video.